Hi, so about a week ago, I posted a video announcement about what I'm gonna do with this channel. For this video, I've decided to go deeper or explain the details more about what to expect in this channel. My next project is to record myself as I study the Gospel according to Matthew and record all my notes. I'm going to post one video per day for 28 days since there are 28 chapters in the book according to Matthew. So that's going to be a sprint. I will be posting 3 videos per week. My target will be every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And then post another video for the weekend, most probably by Sunday. I've been reading this every day now, and I haven't done that for a long time. My original plan really was to post one video per day, one chapter per day. But man, when I decided to not just include my writing for Medium first before creating them into a video, and then create slides as I present my notes in the video, I got hindi kaya. I realized hindi kaya. I got burned out. I did that like for the past 2 weeks, and I got burned out twice, once in each weekend. This week was the worst. I've decided to give myself time to prepare not just the articles, the stories, my notes, but to prepare all the slides and prepare myself before I post those videos. So far, I've only recorded 2 videos, and I'm in the process of creating, I'm going to record a third video after this actually. That's for Matthew chapter 3. Considering all this, I've decided to just post 3 videos per week. One every other week, starting Tuesdays. And I think that's gonna be safe enough for me, and I hope that's okay with you. Now, let's go over to the summary of Matthew, the Gospel according to Matthew. I will tell you about what to expect in my videos with regards to how I will explain things and what you will see in those videos in my slides. Since all the New Testament books are written by the Jews, and Jesus himself is a Jew, everybody knows this, I'd also like to talk about my personal experience with the Jews throughout these chapters. I went to Bible Hub for this, and I think it's best to record my screen right now so you will see what I'm doing. How I got to this page is by searching for Matthew. Let's teach you how to do that. So Bible Hub, go to biblehub.com, and then I just went up here, go all the way to the Gospel according to Matthew in the New Testament. Then I went to summary, and since this is just a study summary of Matthew chapter 1, I went to book study. And by here, when you get here, you'll see everything about the book, the key places. Bible Hub is not paying me to do this, but I just like how this website is created, and I think it's easy to use, so that's why I like it. They have an overview, key people mentioned here, key events. You can study by key prophecies, and here, this is the outline. My first 4 videos is going to be about this introduction. We'll start with the birth of Jesus and the start of his public ministry. And for these chapters, I'm gonna refer much to this book called Jesus and the Essenes by Dolores Cannon. By the end of this video, I'm going to include a disclaimer about this book, about my explanation why I use this book, and I hope you would watch that, because for some people it will be hard to believe in this because of its background, or how it was made, how all the information was gathered. I'm gonna include all that in the disclaimer at the end of this video. And by the time we go to the Sermon on the Mount, which is chapter 5 until chapter 9, and then the Apostles' Discourse from chapter 10 until 12, all of these are just more on the ministry of Jesus Christ, community of kingdom. Jesus teaches in Judea. All these things, I will mostly focus on my personal experience with the Jews, and also since some of these are about what's mentioned are the holidays, the Jewish holidays that they also practice in the New Testament before, and the Jews continue to practice them today. On these chapters, all the way until chapter 27, I will just refer mostly to my experience with the Jews, and also if we will touch on the topics that I know could be connected to Kabbalah, and I know a little bit about Kabbalah. I will also include my explanation on that, my views on that. And at the last part, the resurrection, 27 until chapter 28, I will go back to the information I learned from here. That's what we'll do for the next couple of weeks. And that's what you will see on this channel, on my videos. Now you're probably asking, why am I doing this? You were probably saying, you're a nurse. Why are you doing this? What's your credibility? Well, before all this, before coming to this town, Lakewood, New Jersey, I wasn't just a nurse. As I said in my previous video, I think the title was Life Beyond the Mormon Faith, something like that, 8 months after leaving the church. I thought, I mentioned in that video, I just posted that a week ago, I mentioned there that I was teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ for 2 decades. But in those years, I was teaching from a perspective of a Mormon. Now, if you are familiar with the Mormons, what I knew before, that's kind of different. The beliefs are somehow different to what other Christians normally believe in. So I was teaching in that perspective, okay? Now I no longer identify with them. And since I left 8 months ago and even planned to leave for more than a year ago before the actual quitting the church happened, I've been planning that for a couple of months. So it was over a year ago. I've been reading books, not just these, and the Eastern Gospel of Peace, the History of God. I read other books from other faiths, but I haven't completed all of them. There's just a lot. I have the Quran, and I bought this from TikTok, and they actually have, it's nice because it's in Arabic and it's side by side with English translation, and you can also read from the bottom, as you'll see. I'm not sure if you read it. So I have that, but I honestly didn't read this. Even though one of my friends who converted to Islam, from being a Mormon to Islam, he was really trying to convince me to read that. I also have the Nag Hammadi scriptures. I didn't read all of them. Didn't have the chance to read all of them. At least I got to read the way about using the wisdom of Kabbalah for spiritual transformation fulfillment. This is by Michael Berg. It's the book from the Kabbalah Center. And this is about Kabbalah also, the Zohar. And I haven't read that yet. This I read, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This is really interesting. I also watched a documentary about this, how Wallace Budge got the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It was really interesting. And the Book of Enoch, it's really interesting. And I understand why this wasn't included in the canon that we have, the Bible, because it's gonna confuse people more. The Bible itself right now is already confusing. And if you add the books from here and others, it will be even more confusing. So Tao Te Ching, this one I've already read before in high school, and I like it because I could connect the principles that I learned from here to the principles that I knew as a Mormon back then. And of course, what we also learn in school, the Bhagavad Gita. I remember now where I read the books of Judas and Peter. It's from this book, the Nag Hammadi scriptures. And I also understand why these aren't included in the New Testament, because it's really gonna confuse people if they read this. If you're not ready to leave your faith, I suggest not to read this, or if you don't want to be confused, don't read it. But if you are curious like I am, it's okay. Aside from reading books, I've also watched some videos about other faiths that also help me see the things I already knew in a different light. Now, this time, for the first time after a long time, I'm going to read the New Testament, particularly the four Gospels, starting from the book of Matthew and then Mark, Luke, and John. I would probably include the Acts as well, but that's going to be, I think for this plan, it might take me more than a year. I think it's going to be like 3 years. I don't know when that is going to happen, but for now, we're going to focus on the Gospel according to Matthew. And I want to record this journey as I read with this new perspective I have now. I'm sure I'm still going to discover things I have never discovered before, or simply explain things or understand things that are most likely different from compared to how I see them before. And I want this whole journey I want to share with you. In the next few weeks, starting with the Gospel of according to Matthew, we'll do just that. I've told you earlier that I moved to Lakewood, New Jersey. It's a Jewish town because of a lot of communities here, Jewish communities here. And you know, when I and on this part of this video, I'm gonna read one of the stories I wrote a year ago about. It's about the four types of Jewish sects that secta ba that you will find here in Lakewood. You know, I grew up in the Philippines and I've never, throughout those years until 2022, which was, I'm 40 now, 39, 30, I was 38. I have never met a single Jew. I only got to meet one the first time I stepped out of Newark Airport in New Jersey, because the person who picked us up was a Jew. He was a young man. He drove me and my first roommate to our staff house back then, where we stayed for a couple of months before moving into our own apartments. So he was a Jew. And that was a long drive, about 40 minutes or more. My roommate, she was really friendly. The conversation went to about how we know about Lakewood, what we know about the Jews, and then my roommate inviting him to go to the Philippines, to visit the Philippines, and his first reaction was, "Is there kosher food?" And it's gonna be hard to find kosher food in the Philippines, honestly, because I never went to places that have Jews in them. Maybe I've met some of them, but maybe they weren't the type of people who would tell you, "Oh, I'm Jewish," like that. Maybe. Well, oh wait, there was a time that the staff of where I am working right now as a nurse. It's a company owned by a Jew, and his staff, the CEO, and the people who worked our migration, our papers to work here as residents, legal residents of this country. They're all Jews, and we got to meet some of them about 3 years ago too, before coming here. I have actually met a Jew in the Philippines, but they're from this company, so technically they're from New Jersey too. So I've never met a Jew that was living in the Philippines. That's what I meant. So 2 years later, after moving here, I experienced 2 Rosh Hashanahs, 2 Yom Kippurs, and 2 Hanukkah. That's December. That's really fun. And 3 Purims. Now, 2 Pesach. Pesach is coming. Pesach means the Passover. And I've experienced 2 Pesachs, but it's gonna be 3 now because it's gonna overlap with our Holy Week for the Christians. And that's because I've been living here for 2.5 years. I lived and worked with them, with the Jewish people here in Lakewood, New Jersey. So in this medium post that I'm going to read to you, I'll talk about the types of Jews you'll meet in Lakewood and what I know about them before coming to New Jersey and what I know now after living with them for 2.5 years. Since I'm a nurse, which you already know if you've been watching this video alone, the recent videos I posted were all connected to my experience as a nurse and as a Filipino immigrant living in the United States, living in New Jersey particularly. I felt I might as well read the story from Medium about Lakewood, where I currently live for more than 2 years now. So here's the, since I already told you about my experience coming here and my first encounter with the Jewish people, which is that guy, and this other encounter that I have, I'm gonna have to tell you that before I read the story. When we first got here, my roommate and I, our staff house is like a townhouse, but we all, the company was renting out just the bottom part of the apartment. It has 2 bedrooms, and across the street was I think a synagogue, and that was Friday or Thursday, I think, when we got here. I think that was Friday. Well, if it wasn't Thursday, it's gonna be Friday. When was that? We went here 2022. September 22nd was a Thursday. So the next day, when we came out, it was our first Shabbos here, and we saw, well, on the first day, we already saw people wearing black, women, children, men, and on the next day, we saw some of these men wearing like a bird's nest type of hat on their heads, and it's the first time I saw them, and also that's also the first time for my roommate back then. Not just with her, it's actually the same with all the Filipinos. Because I think I'm not the only one who have never met a Jew all their life, especially when you live in the Philippines all your life, right? So that's that's a common experience for everyone here for when they first got here. Now I'm gonna read the medium story to you. So it's entitled Discovering Lakewood, New Jersey, What Kind of Jewish Sects Will You Find Here? And I posted that in August 15, 2024. And where I said there were actually 4 types of Jewish sects secta in Lakewood. And here's how I found that out. One of the common things I do as a home care nurse is tracheostomy care and changing the ties with the parent. I do the tracheostomy care on my own, but the changing ties, I need to do that with another person. And I do that with my patient's mom. It was at this moment that the mom and I began talking about the different sects in the Jewish community here in Lakewood, New Jersey. She told me that there are 4 sects, secta ba, the Ashkenazi, Hasidic, Sephardic, and the modern Orthodox Jews. And I thought this is going to be exciting. Then I grabbed the opportunity because this type of conversation is really interesting for me. So the Ashkenazi Jews, so according to the mom, Lakewood used to be populated only by the Ashkenazi, and I understood why, because when I did a Google search, these Jewish people, the Ashkenazis, are the ones who first migrated here in the United States from Europe. They were mainly from Central and Eastern Europe before all the other sects, before all the other types of Jewish people came. We'll stick with that. And then there's the Hasidic Jews. They're the ones you see with peyos, wearing shtreimel or fur hats on Shabbos. This is what the mother said. So that's what we saw on our first Shabbos here. The type of hat that they were wearing, like a bird's nest, it's called shtreimel or fur hats. So peyos or peyot in Hebrew are the side locks we saw worn by the Orthodox Jewish boys. I knew about this before because I have watched some Netflix series about Jews, and they were wearing peyos. So it turned out they were Orthodox Jews or modern Orthodox Jews. I mean, it turned out they're possibly Hasidic Jews because they're wearing those. I think that's called shtisel, the one I was watching on Netflix before. It's shtisel. It's a nice series. I loved it. And I told the mom that those were the type of people that we saw on our first Shabbos here, the Hasidic Jews. And because they are really noticeable in that neighborhood. They were everywhere. They were walking everywhere during Shabbos because you see on Shabbos, they don't use electronic stuff and they don't drive. That's why synagogues here are almost close to each other so that every time Shabbos comes, it will be easy for people to get to the synagogue without using a car. And when we also talked about the modern Orthodox Jews, she didn't give me much information about that. But I remember when we first got here, I talked to the CEO of the agency where that I'm working now. Talked to us about it, that there are modern Orthodox Jews and Orthodox Jews here. And I just told the mom about at that time, this movie came out on Netflix. It was produced by Adam Sandler, and his family was in it, his wife, his children, and they're all Jewish, but a Russian Jewish descent. And I told them all about this, and she said, well, it's interesting. And then now the fourth type of Jewish people you'll see around this area is the Sephardic Jews. And she said they're mostly from the Middle East. So they could be speaking Arabic. I told them that I saw some of the Jews, mostly in the north, wearing kippah. A kippah is like a yarmulke, the skull cap that the Jewish people are wearing. There are Jewish people there who are wearing colored yarmulke, but here in Lakewood, you wouldn't see any type of color, just dark brown. But in the north, I saw some people wearing light blue yarmulkes and other super light colors. And she said they're probably Sephardic Jews. And I also saw this when I watched that Adam Sandler movie. In that bar mitzvah party, they were wearing light colored yarmulkes or kippas. Honestly, I'm really glad I get to have this free conversation with my patient's mom. I also, this just happened recently, I got to talk to my patient's father about a question I have while studying the New Testament. I was reading about baptism, and I read about the mikveh, and I asked him about that. At first, he was really serious about it. When I asked about the mikveh, I asked him were they doing it only once in their life, and he said they does that sometimes. The bathing, the ritual bath, wasn't just done once, and they have been doing that even in the Old Testament times, the Tanakh times. I'm gonna start posting my videos. Chapter 1, it's going to be Passover on the 12th. I'm thinking that maybe I'm gonna post my first Matthew chapter first on Tuesday, April 8th. Expect that to be posted by then, and then Matthew chapter 2 by April 10th, which is the Thursday. On Saturday, it's gonna be Matthew chapter 3. And on the 13th, which is Palm Sunday, I'm gonna post another video. So we'll move on from there. So I'll see you on Tuesday. I'm going to focus on information I didn't know before. I was raised in a religious family, so most of what I know about the scriptures are, well, if not all, is from a perspective of how Mormons understand them. I've said that in my previous post on Medium. Leaving the church a couple of months ago led me to seek out other books to see things in a different light, a different perspective. The Essenes and Qumran are a few of the things that I was curious about. I knew about the Dead Sea Scrolls when I was a teenager, but I never had a chance to dig deeper, mostly because I was discouraged in doing so. About a year ago, in one of my Medium posts, I mentioned that I will reread the scriptures, especially the four Gospels of the New Testament, from a perspective of someone who has an idea about the Essenes, their ways, their beliefs, their customs, their way of life. That was a year ago. Now I'm finally doing it. And here's another disclaimer. If you do a Google search on Dolores Cannon, the author of the book I mentioned, you will learn about her work, which is hypnotherapy, specializing in past life regression. I'm not here to convince you that this is possible or you should believe in this. I'm also not here to convince you to do the opposite, which is not to believe in it. What I did in these videos is refer to new information I've gathered from the books I've read as I now reread the Gospel according to Matthew. As I begin to study the Torah with you, or for Christians, it's the 5 books of Moses. We'll start with Genesis. I'm gonna mostly refer to my personal experiences with the Jews since I moved here in Lakewood, New Jersey, which is a Jewish town. This is a town with a lot of Jewish communities, just like Brooklyn, New York. I'm also going to refer to other information I've gathered from reading other books and learning a little bit about Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism. We'll go through that in a few months or in a few weeks. But for now, since we are reading from the New Testament, we'll focus mostly on what I learned from this book, Jesus and the Essenes by Dolores Cannon. Now, past life regression hypnotherapy is how Dolores got all the information she wrote in this book. She got this information from someone's past life, and his name was Sudi. He's an Essene. The story was she met this young girl who works in the office. She used to serve in the Air Force, and this girl grew up Christian in a Christian family. At first, it was hard for her. It was hard for her to believe that she was, as it turned out, she used to be an Essene in her past life. And not just that, especially she was someone who personally knew Jesus Christ and John the Baptist during that time. What this author, Dolores Cannon, did is she confirmed all the information she gathered from her sessions with this girl by talking to rabbis and other theologians, and did her own research because she didn't know about Jewish customs really until she talked to these scholars. Many of these historians and theologians also believe that Jesus was an Essene or also walked with him. We will focus mostly on what I learned from this book while reading all the four Gospels, but there could also be some chapters where I wouldn't need to refer to this a lot, but instead refer to other books I read.